Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Hello and welcome into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm your host tonight, Cassidy Wood. I'll be joined alongside Chris Mueller here in a little bit. There he is. Hey, Chris, how are you tonight?
Cassidy, I am doing better than the Pittsburgh Steelers the last 3 weeks. So I guess that's a low baseline and a low bar to have cleared, but I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas. I know a lot of Steeler fans had kind of a crappier one yesterday, hoped for a better outcome, obviously, and also with the Pitt Panthers today. 6 overtime loss to Toledo in that bowl game. They end their season on a 6-game skid. So not too happy here in Pittsburgh.
No, and I don't know where to start, but I guess Pat Narduzzi should be. I will start with current events and work backwards very briefly. Pat Narduzzi should be happy that Mike Tomlin is the coach of the pro team in town and that the pro team in town is under siege, because I don't know if Pat thought people wanted to watch more Pitt Toledo on TV, but the decision to kick an 18-yard field goal on 4th and 1 and prolong the agony of that game today for several more overtimes is a head-scratcher, a mind-bender. His explanation didn't make sense, and as bad as it's been for the Steelers, starting 7-0 and then losing 6 straight games, including your bowl game, puts a damper is not the strong enough word, Cassidy, to use for it. It really just throws into question a lot of what Pitt has really been building and trying to do here, and you just wonder how good it's going to look next year.
Yeah, I mean, I was confused, honestly, watching this game. I even asked Steve at one point, do they have all of these starting linebackers in? I remember everybody was so high on them, you know, through that 7-game win streak, calling them the Sharks, you know, saying they were this elite defense. And to go up against a MAC school and allow them to push it into 6 overtimes and score that many points, it just doesn't make sense to me. I was shocked to see that some of those linebackers were in that game. I really didn't think that was the case. But, you know, shout out to the freshmen. They ended up putting in that true freshman, Penn Hills native, Julian Duggar in that game. And, I mean, he had a pretty decent performance. That's a big stage for a freshman to get in there and put on a show like that. So battled hard, but yeah, 6-game losing streak to end the season, not good. And now with our pro team here, Steelers, 3-game skid. Pomp and I were talking the other day, the last 6 years, 4 of those years, they've lost 3 straight in December. December, that's not when you're losing games. That should be when you're playing your best football is in December. It's at the end of the year. A lot is on the line as we look at these playoff implications. And to have them go on and lose this many games in December, you know, these last 3 games too by double digits for the first time since, I believe, 1988. It's just, you can't be doing this in December.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were outclassed badly in these 3 losses, I think should tell you a couple different things. Mike Tomlin, you know, the history lesson here for maybe younger viewers is that his very first year with the Steelers, he really kind of rode the guys and made them go hard at practice more than they probably needed to as a veteran team, like he was trying to establish himself. And that team kind of played some of its worst football down the stretch and then faded badly in a playoff loss. And he seemed to learn his lesson, obviously, the next year, because all the veterans from that team will tell you he was much easier on those guys because he knew what they were capable of. And, well, they won the Super Bowl. And I think what you bring up about these losing skids is kind of telling about the way the Steelers are constructed. The later it gets, when other teams have kind of figured themselves out a little bit more and know what they're all about, they are better equipped to handle the Steelers. In this particular case, I think you're going up against 3 teams in a row, all of whom could win the Super Bowl, and it wouldn't surprise me. But it's one thing to lose those games. You know, you lose all 3 by double digits. You lose, 27-13. You lose 34-17. You lose 29-10. It's just progressively worse. It's one thing to do that, or it's one thing to lose close and be in the games. It's another thing to just be fully outclassed. And I think this is where we're at with the Steelers. They're probably an above-average team. I wouldn't say a good team all the time. And above-average teams make the playoffs. great teams are the ones who contend for Super Bowls, and they feast on above-average teams in the first round of the playoffs, and it sure looks like that's what the Steelers are headed for, given the current state of affairs, is a very quick one-and-done again in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I really had high hopes for the Steelers offense. I thought bringing in Arthur Smith, bringing in a vet like Russ, maybe it would be, a more high-powered offense that we've been waiting to see for a few years now. But when you watch this team go up against like a Chiefs-type offense, you're watching that game and you're like, oh, that's how it's supposed to look. That's how it's supposed to go. It shouldn't feel so difficult if you have one of these elite offenses. So I definitely agree with you there. And then on the defensive side, too, I mean, the Steelers' defense is just not really what we thought, I don't think, either. And I think some guys, the locker room after the game yesterday, the guys were very upset, to put it mildly. I think there are maybe one or two guys that are maybe not doing their jobs. No one's going to call them out, obviously, but I think that locker room right now is just very frustrated, too, on the defensive side.
Well, that's the side of the ball, as you well know, Cassidy, that's getting paid 9 figures collectively, right. Something like $130 million, whatever the actual number is. And they're the side of the ball where Mike Tomlin likes to hang his hat, where he thinks he has an advantage. I mean, he got out-coached in almost comical fashion by Andy Reid. Mahomes got the ball out, or I think historically gets the ball out faster against the Steelers than against any team, which tells you a bunch of different things, one of which is that his receivers are always open immediately, which is a scheme versus scheme loss for the Steelers. And then I like you, and pretty much like everybody at this point, because I'm certainly getting asked about it by my friends, who aren't in the sports media. We're all kind of wondering the genesis and the meaning of some of these quotes about, when one guy doesn't do their job, the whole thing collapses. When Cam Hayward says that, is he just trying to illustrate a larger point about everybody's got to do their job, we're only as strong as the weakest link, or is he not so subtly suggesting that there is a specific player or players who are really playing poorly? If it's the latter, that's a massive problem for Mike Tomlin. And he had better have a finger on the pulse of who that guy is or who those guys are and yank them out of the lineup. I'll say this much. Patrick Queen certainly did not seem to be happy with Cam Sutton on multiple occasions in that Chiefs game. And we all hear about how Cam Sutton's got this exceptional football IQ. It was controversial in the first place to bring him back this offseason. If he's the guy who's been out of position, that is just a terrible, terrible look on multiple fronts for this franchise. I'm not saying it is him, but I saw multiple times, and I think on the broadcast they pointed out, Patrick Queen and Sutton seemed like they were having miscommunications on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a problem, too, in these defenses when a guy's trying to play, quote-unquote, hero ball and they're not knowing their role in this defense. They're trying to go out there and create a splash play. Well, it's, screwing up the rest of the defense. So hopefully they can get it figured out. They do have this mini bye now, then one final regular season game against the Bengals, January 5th. So they have some time off here, and hopefully they can get that figured out. This is our GMC Sierra tweet of the night by ESPN. Toledo beats Pitt in 6 OT. This was the first time an FBS bowl game has gone to 6 overtimes since overtime was first established in 1996. Again, just such an unfortunate loss for these Pitt Panthers. Such a high, 7-0, and then to lose 6 straight is not good at all. We actually do have some callers calling in about Pitt football, so let's get to some of them. We'll go first, David in Washington. David, what's going on?
Yes, good evening to both of you. Hey, listen, I'm to the point where I hope Chancellor Gable has tuned into the show tonight, because I don't speak for all Pitt fans, but we're wore out. And if we were to get up tomorrow and find out that Pat Narduzzi was fired, I'm okay with that, because there has to be some accountability, and that comes from the Chancellor's office. So if they do nothing and it's going to be business as usual next year, that shows me that she's not committed to getting this football program turned around. I'll hang up and listen to what each of you have to say, and thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting what transpires in these next couple weeks. Obviously, they just hired that new athletic director, Alan Green, so a big job on his plate now. I believe he just got here a couple months ago, so now he has a big task at hand, trying to decide what to do with this Pitt football team. I mean, look, it's difficult. I was in a couple of those press conferences with Narduzzi throughout this season, and he pointed to the NIL issues and the transfer portal issues, and that they've had these offensive line struggles all year long. They don't have depth at the O-line position, and it's tough to get guys in. And he was blaming NIL, and he said, look, if you guys want more depth on the offensive line, you want these better players in here just in case anything happens, then we need more NIL, and we need to be able to go out and buy these players.
I'm sorry. Pat is playing the world's tiniest violin to me when he bemoans NIL. It might be true. Pitt might not have the deep pockets, but that's where your coach is supposed to help set you apart.
Right.
I have absolutely no sympathy for him. He's the one making more money than all these guys that they're bringing in. He's making multiple millions of dollars. His contract's still got a couple more years on it. Like, your job is to take a roster, whether the money is there to get all the players you need, and make the most of it. And he made the least of it for the last 6 games. And I'll just say this, Cassidy. I know we've got other people on the line, Pitt fans who are frustrated. I certainly want to let them have their say tonight. Mm-hmm. Think about the decision he actually made in his explanation of essentially saying, well, I needed to make a decision to kick that field goal. Mm-hmm. You kick the field goal and it works. You still have to stop Toledo again and then score from the 3-yard line. Mm-hmm. He was on the 1. The game was right there, one way or the other. Like, what is the better chance that you're going to punch the ball in from the 1-yard line and score and win, and that's it, or that you're going to stop the other guy and then get one yourself? Like, it just, not only was it just such an episode of football cowardice, the math didn't even make sense from his point of view. That's what had me kind of like rolling my eyes just about out of my head while I was watching it in real time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, too, he has a couple years left on that contract. So it's a big question mark for them because they're going to have to pay out some of it in order to let him go. Is it worth it? I mean, I don't know.
I don't even know if they want to, though, Cass. Like, here's the thing. Like, what does Pitt want to be? Like, I don't even know how unhappy they are. I think 7-6, it's one of those deals where if you start 2-5 or 1-6, and then you rip off 6 straight wins, it's the entire how did you get there, right? You drive to Disney World, if your kids are immaculate the entire 13 or 14 hours and you get there, well, that was great. And then maybe the last hour they're screaming at each other, you're frayed at the nerves. If they're screaming at each other for the first hour and then you get 13 hours of peace and quiet, well, that's a different story. So I think Pitt has to decide what do they want to be, and is Pat Narduzzi and the mindset that he brings and some of the frustrations maybe that he feels about NIL and their inability or ability or whatever he feels to compete, do they really want to continue down this path with him? Like, and here's the other thing. Where does this path even lead? People could say, well, 2021, he had them, really on the fringes of like serious contention. Well, that's starting to look a lot more like a blip on the radar and an anomaly than just a great year that he has to come back and build back to again. Like, I just wonder if he's even capable of it.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. All right, let's go to Jim and Peters. Jim, what's going on?
Hey, I'm a Pitt graduate, 1975, and you know what? I was never so pissed off at Pitt. The way the way that call was abominable. Not going. But here's the thing: this 2-point conversion crap. This is insane. But I'll tell you what: when you start 7 wins and you lose 6 in a row, I mean, if he doesn't
Jim, I know you're a diehard. Think about this, man. Your season starts 7-0. You pick off Kyle McCord 5 times. Pony's in shambles because it's one of his all-time worst predictions. You end the season. Think about this. I'm just going to say this very flatly here. Okay. Losing 6 straight, and in your final game having a very mid-tier MAC program rally from 10 down in the 4th quarter and beat you in a bowl game that had more people on the field once the game ended than were in the stands at any point. Like, that's the state of things right now.
Oh, yeah, it's pathetic.
I think you solidified.
All right, I'm spreading, Cassidy, I'm spreading way too much Christmas cheer here. It's Boxing Day, and I'm just speed bagging the program right now. This is probably not the right look for me.
This is their therapy session, and I love it. All right, let's go to Ed in North Hills.
It's frustrating as, I'll say this. Hold on here. I'll say this. I'm a guy who went to Penn State, and I've rooted for Pitt, and that makes Penn State people crazy, and Pitt fans kind of, I think, like that.
Yeah.
I say this as somebody that wants them to be good. Like, to the extent that I have, like, a serious rooting interest here, I would like to see Pitt be good. It's fun when they're really good. And it does frustrate me that it feels like they are on a treadmill to nowhere yet again.
Yeah. All right, Ed in North Hills, he wants to talk about Narduzzi. Ed, what's going on?
Hello?
Hey. Yeah,
Hey.
You got it.
It's Chuck. And it seems like everybody ahead of me has gotten to beat up DiNardo or DiNardo or whatever the heck the guy's name, Narduzzi. You know, why is he still here? Seems like a lot of people have still answered. So, hey, thanks.
All right, just wanted to add to that. Yeah, I mean, hey, it was very unfortunate to see the season pan out the way it did. I mean, the other thing I got to ask you too, Chris, I mean, Eli Holstein going down. If he's fully 100% healthy, do you see the season maybe ending a little bit differently? Or do you think, because I mean, he was technically healthy in that Cal game. I think that's where things started to kind of falter. And he came out after that game and said, hey, look, I was playing like a true freshman out there, and that was on me. I need to turn it around. But then he turned around and got injured in that next game, and Nate Yarnell came out. Nate Yarnell, decent, but I mean, I just wonder if Eli Holstein was fully healthy the entirety of the season, if maybe it was a little bit of a different outcome.
Maybe you get another win, but his play, as you noted, was trending downward in that Cal game. They were very fortunate to escape there. The Syracuse game was an anomaly because of the defensive touchdowns, and just that turned the game on its ear. He got hurt in that game, I think, because Pat wanted to see more from him because he hadn't to that point and wanted to give him more reps. But I look at this very quickly, Cassidy, and say Cade Bell at least got a look from a program like Oklahoma for their offensive coordinator vacancy before they filled it. That tells me that smart people at big-moneyed schools around college football didn't think the system was the problem. They maybe would have cited the execution by the quarterback. He needs to be a lot better from start to finish with no gaps in his play next year. And I wouldn't wonder if maybe they would look at Julian Duggar and say, we can go two-quarterback system where we have a change of pace. We saw a team like Penn State that's still alive do that with Aller and Pribula this year. And so if you've got somebody that gives you a different look, you'd be crazy not to use it if you're Pitt.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, guys. An unfortunate day for Pitt, but hey, maybe the Steelers can turn it around. Maybe they can fix it in this mini bye, you know? Maybe. Right, Chris? Maybe. Thank you guys for joining us. Same place, same time tomorrow night.